All right. Well, happy Friday, everyone. David Shepherd here. Well, friends, for those of you just tuning in, and if we're now on YouTube, so there may be people that aren't my Substack subscribers. So I'll just remind you, Phil and I do a weekly review of politics from a conservative perspective. I'm in Fairfax, Virginia. Phil is in Newport News, and Phil's a former Virginia delegate. All right. Well, I think this week start off with potential for good news, and that is the Supreme Court heard a case of Watson versus the RNC, which deals with when is election day and can ballots come in after election day. States do control elections, but there are certain laws, federal laws, that give the federal government some guidelines, that create some guidelines. And they talk about an 1845 law that establishes election day is the Tuesday following the first Monday. And all states comply with that, have to comply with that. And the question is, and this is a COVID era thing, and Virginia did this too. Some states started accepting ballots after the election as long as they're postmarked by election day. And that's being challenged by the RNC and a few other groups. And of all places, Mississippi, a red state, which apparently had such a system. And so the question is, can they still keep accepting them? I happen to believe, and I won't go too much into this, except to say that my belief is that election day includes all the day when all the ballots come in. And so in Virginia, when you vote in person, 7 o'clock is deadline. And to go in to vote, and after that, that's it. We close the election. They'll still be counting, of course, but all ballots have to be in by then. So I don't believe in the ballots coming in 3 days later or 5 days later. And I will say this, from a practical standpoint, if one candidate's ahead, and then, oh, hey, the next couple of days, whoa, this is getting tighter, all these other ballots coming in, it just hurts the credibility of the election. And either side is going to complain that, hey, they're going to have less confidence in this one. I certainly would. So, and also, they're giving you 6 weeks, right, to vote. And if you can't do it within that window, I mean, at some point we have to draw the line. But anyway, it looks like the justices are skeptical of Mississippi's grace period based on the questions. Now, you had Jackson, Sotomayor, and Kagan all in favor, but you had, and again, we're reading the tea leaves here, but I think with those three you can tell. And then you had Alito, Thomas, Kavanaugh seeming to be strongly for getting rid of that. The question, of course, would be, it looks like Barrett and
where's
Roberts.
Gorsuch?
So
Where was
we'll
Gorsuch?
see. I think Gorsuch seems skeptical, but they don't think he's totally a no yet, or totally in favor of getting rid of the things. So we'll see with Gorsuch. He was a little harder to read, I think. Strikes down the Mississippi case, then it'll affect our state of Virginia and a bunch of others. But anyway, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, or just the very idea of mail-in postmark, as long as it's postmarked by election day.
You started off by saying that in 1845, the court ruled that there was an election day. It didn't say days, it said day. That's single. I understand what election day means. Quite frankly, I think we've gone a little overboard with the whole election process by having, in Virginia, we've got 6 weeks, actually 45 days of early voting. And then you allow for ballots to come in as long as they're postmarked by 7 p.m. For 5 days. So in essence, you've got a 50-day election day, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I understand the argument that it's going to increase the voter participation. I haven't seen any evidence that it increases the voter participation. Last year in November, statewide election, gubernatorial election in Virginia. And we saw a participation rate of 54.9%. 45.1% chose not to vote in that 50-day period that we had open voting. I could deal with, and I understand people working this and the other. I wouldn't have a problem if we said, the weekend prior and the Monday prior to Election Day. But that would be it. And mail-in ballots would have to be in by 7 p.m. On Election Day. There certainly wouldn't be any post-Election Day, grace period from my perspective. There's a right to vote, and that right comes with the responsibility to vote. And you vote according to the rules that are established. And quite frankly, I never have understood the 45 days before and the 5 days after. I think it's, like I said, a weekend before, the Monday before, yes, I could deal with that. But no, I'm not a big fan of mail-in ballots, except for the deployed military and those that are unable to get to the polls because of a medical condition or they're traveling. And still, those should be in by 7 p.m. on Election Day. So if you're deployed military, you're deployed. Get the ballot first day it's available, mail it in the first day it's available, and then you don't have to worry about it. If the military comes up and says, hey, there was a problem, we couldn't get them there, that's different. But you've got an organization accepting responsibility for not getting them in on time. You could count those. I doubt that those would be enough to overturn an election anyway. But, it just frustrates me that we've gotten to the point in this country where we're giving everybody American rights, and we're doing it without any American responsibilities attached to it. At least now we've got defined borders. But when we had Biden in there were no defined borders for this country. If you don't have rules, strict rules for voting, and you don't monitor who is voting, you don't care when their ballot comes in, heck, 50 days, well, why not make it 365 days? You got to draw a line somewhere, and I think we've been way too lenient in the whole concept of Election Day being a 50-day period of time.
I agree. It's almost come election season. And the other thing I would say is that while we're talking about voting, the thing about a voter ID, it's not about you, it's about the other people voting. I show an ID to reassure other people that I'm okay, that I should be able to vote. So I think of it as a community or a civic act, my duty to show an ID. So I don't personalize it so much. Well, we'll see what happens, because this will have an effect on our election laws. So we'll see how the court rules. And if they rule on time, it'll take place for this election. It'll strike down the postmark thing, which is, it's kind of weird though, isn't it? That on election day, well, I have the time to go to the post office to mail this. I don't really have the time to go up to the school to vote. So I don't know, it's just kind of a weird thing. But anyway, we'll see. I just think that you got to tighten the rules all across the board. Otherwise, you're opening the door to some cheating.
Mail-in ballots. You don't know who's sending it in. In the 2020 election, I was living with my son, and his grandfather, who had passed away 3 years earlier, received 3 ballots. And so it's like, what's going on here? This is crazy. I mean, I could have filled out those ballots, and no one would have known that he didn't do it. And so I think the whole mail-in ballot thing, the generic thing where anybody can do it, is just fraught with the opportunity for fraud, abuse, whatever you want to call it. And there are some states that claim they've got it perfected, this, that, and the other. I don't know. I'm just a believer that you got to prove who you are. And everybody that submits a ballot, except for the few exceptions that I mentioned, should have to prove it. Hey, for those mail-in ballots, I wouldn't care if the person had to submit a picture on it, to verify, hey, this is the person that did it. That would not bother me. But I think it's out of hand. I mean, there were 155 million votes cast in the 2020 election. If you look at Trump's total and Biden's total, Trump got 74 million, Biden got 81 million. Now that's 155 million people. Well, that year there were only like 178 million people registered to vote in this country. Well, that's pretty close to having a 90%, 85% voter turnout. Well, the Fed said that the turnout was only 66.7. So where did all those extra ballots come from? And it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
We've never had a turnout that strong, and I'm glad it is. But then for the government to turn around and say, yeah, but we had a 66%. No, you didn't. You had close to an 80% voter turnout based on the vote totals for ballots that were counted. It's
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes me very cynical, and like you said, it does put an element of distrust into the validity of the election.
I think that's one of the problems with it. So hopefully the judges will strike that down. Well, the other bit of news would be last night it looked like there was a deal on opening the partial shutdown in the Senate. That's sort of a compromise. But fortunately, the House said no go. This is a horrible sort of compromise. So I guess we're still in the partial shutdown. But one thing but we've got ICE. This is another, I think, great thing, great move on Trump's part. ICE apparently is helping the TSA deal with some of the lines, and so I think that's great PR. But Phil, tell us about the deal though, that the shutdown, why it was a bad deal, or the
well,
Senate
I think
had a
when
bad
you look
deal.
at all the various sections that they were funding, Coast Guard, they were funding FEMA, they were funding TSA, so on and so forth. Well, when it got down to funding ICE, they said zero. Now, I don't know my understanding is the bill that was passed in the summer funded ICE and the Border Patrol into 2029. So I don't know if that meant that that zero was withdrawing the money that had already been approved or not. But there was zero for Border Patrol, there was zero for ICE, and there was zero support from Mike Johnson and the Republicans in the House. And so that's why they didn't even bother to vote on it. They just are not doing it because they're not going to defund ICE or Border Patrol. And the unfortunate thing there is the people that are getting hurt by this. President Trump did sign an executive order this afternoon, though, that will fund the TSA. And he's getting the money. They have the ability to move some money around, a limited amount of money that they can move around. But he apparently has the resources to at least pay and the back pay for TSA. So that will be two healthy paychecks that they get. But some of them have already been evicted from their apartments. They've already had, defaulted on loans and this, that, and the other. So I think there needs to be a provision, kind of like a no strike provision, that for those that are providing an important public service like security at the airports, that you can go into these shutdowns, but these people are protected from the shutdown. And TSA, and I think TSA, FEMA, Coast Guard, I think that whole Department of Homeland Security ought to be exempt from that. Those people are providing a valuable security service to the country. And, then again, I'm also a believer that if you're going to shut down the government, then the Congress gets their pay shut down too. Yeah, and now, if it's the House that created the problem, I would say, all right, you just do the Senate. But because you can't tell from one day to the next who's the problem, if the government shuts down, then Congress and their staff, their money is shut off. Because it might be more important shutting down the staff, because they're the ones that really do all the work. And I think this idea of airlines that allow Congress to go to the front of the line, those airlines ought to have some penalty and punishment against them. Congress, no congressman should have a right to cut a regular citizen in line. I don't want to hear now. Delta put out the word that they were no longer going to honor that, and that congressmen were not going to go to the front of the line. I commend them for that, and I really am disappointed that the other airlines didn't do the same thing. It was great public relations for Delta, just as you mentioned, the great public relations for ICE. being at the airports helping the TSA.
It really helped. That was a smart move. Well, I'm glad Trump was able to find the money, at least temporarily for now. But and then there was a talk of Elon Musk paying for the. But all of this should be really hurting the Democrats right now, and it's not. And there's some frustration about that. I think part of that is the focus of Trump is the war in Iran, and it just doesn't seem like. And I don't know if a lot of people realize, people flying realize that there's a partial shutdown, but I don't think a lot of Americans even realize it. But I just think it's a case we should easily can make, blaming the Democrats for this, and we've sort of failed to do that. And so I'm kind of sorry about that. But I also kind of understand it because, well, there's a lot going on. Speaking of a lot going on, you got the case in Iran where Trump is saying that negotiations are taking place. Iran denies it, but I guess it's through intermediaries. Some think it's almost like a psychological war, psychological operation to say they're desperate for making a deal. They want to make a deal. They're begging for it. So I don't know what to make of that. I'm sure behind the scenes there are talks going on. But I think from Iran's standpoint, they want the market to crash. They want the price of oil to go up. And so I think they're going to continue to make more belligerent noises or more to sound as if they're not willing to make any sort of deal. Because I think they want to continue to roil the markets.
I trust the Iranian government less than I trust Putin now. And we've had the conversation. We don't believe a word that Putin says, and that hadn't changed for me. But I'm the same way with the Iranians. I know that Trump got 10 ships of oil were able to pass through the strait as a gift. The Iranians said that was a gift, and they asked for a 7-day extension on the talks, and Trump gave them 10. I wouldn't have given them 10. I wouldn't have given them 7. I would have said, look, I gave you 5 initially. I'll give you another 5, but that's it. At some point in negotiations, you got to draw a line. Now, what's going to happen whenever the 10 days end, I don't know. I know that he might have extended it for 10 days in order to give all of the troops that he wants in place. So it really might not have anything to do with Iran and their feelings, but to give him a chance to get the military station. He's got like 10,000 Marines ready to go. He's got the 182nd Airborne Division, getting in place. Now, you don't know what they're going to be used for, but, I don't like the troops on the ground at all. We've stated that all along. So if he's going to use those troops, it's got to be for a specific purpose. Maybe they know exactly where the uranium is stored. Maybe the troops are going in to protect the people that are going to be taking the uranium out. That might be the only reason, a very defined mission. If Trump wants to take over the island where 90% of the oil flows from Iran to other countries, because that's where it gets loaded on the ships, there's going to be a defensive force there, which means there's going to be a battle, and I think that's going to cost Americans some lives. And the idea of crashing the world economy, it's not just the U.S. because we don't get anything from Iran, like 1% or something, but the damage that it does to the other states, Middle Eastern states, European countries. It's a tough decision, and I just wish it was one that we didn't have to make. I don't have a problem with the air war and just bomb everything that you can. And if you know where those uranium, the 60% enriched uranium is, drop the biggest bombs you got on that all day long and destroy it, rather than having to put troops on the ground. But we'll see what happens. I'm not disappointed because it's still only been 4 weeks, and we think it's been 4 years. Well, it hasn't been that long, but Americans want instant gratification, and I hope that they get done. Apparently, Israel was ready to take out 2 more of the leaders, and Trump told them not to because he feels like they're making progress in the talks. And until you get rid of the leaders, I think you're always going to have that theocracy mentality, and that's a tough thing to defeat.
And the other thing is, I think they hold on because this is all I've got. This is their utopia. There's no real afterlife for them. Did you see the Facebook meme about the Ayatollah gets to the pearly gates, and then he discovers that the 72 virgins that he's been promised include trans.
I don't know if I saw that one, but that would be a good one.
Yeah, I think Americans like a scoreboard, and they like to know who's winning and when and what quarter are you in. Are you at halftime yet? Where are you, third quarter? And in this case, it's just we don't really know. It's kind of unclear, and so that lack of clarity makes people nervous. So I think that's the difference here. And I know it's tough because the market's taken a big hit, and I've lost a good bit so far in my retirement accounts. But I realize that, as you pointed out, the stock market's for the long run. And in the long run, we're better off without the Iranian regime, without the mullahs there. I agree. But right now, it's a little tough because, the markets hate uncertainty. Anyway, hopefully we'll get some closure on this soon, but who knows? Same thing with the partial government shutdown. Hopefully we get that taken care of and Democrats get the blame, which they deserve. So we've got to make it stick. We need this to stick to that as it should. Of course, the other thing is we're here in Virginia, and so the voting continues on the Democrats' gerrymander. But apparently, some evidence seems to be favorable to us in terms of early turnout. It seems to be higher in some of the red counties from what I'm hearing, what I'm gathering. Also, there was a poll recently where it was 52% opposed the redistricting. The problem with that poll is all that matters is who comes out to vote. And I don't doubt that more than half of Virginians think this is a bad idea. But the question is, are they going to come out and vote? And the Dems, I think, are going to come out hard, and we're coming out hard. But they're more partisan Dems than partisan Republicans at this point.
From my perspective, this redistricting is an attack on our democracy, and I say that because. We that live in Virginia, the people that support this say we have to do this in Virginia to protect democracy because of what somebody did in Texas or Missouri or North Carolina or Timbuktu. No, we're Virginia. We need to protect our standards in Virginia. We shouldn't stoop to anybody else's standards. I'm opposed to mid-decade redistricting. I don't care who's doing it. The situation in Texas that most people don't realize, it was a result of a court case. And that court case is what delayed them from doing it at the normal time. And at the normal time, they couldn't get it done either because the Democrats left the state. And by the time they came back, it was too late to get it done for the time they were doing it. But that's completely different. Mid-decade redistricting is wrong. And you did have some states, I think Missouri did it. I think North Carolina did it. There might have, maybe Ohio did something. But let's be Virginia. And in Virginia, we had an A rating from the gerrymandering project at Princeton. We got an A rating, and that was really based on fairness. And if you look at our election results, we haven't had any statewide election results that I can remember that were 91% to 9%. We haven't had any candidates to do that bad. And yet that's the kind of districts they want to set up, where you have the 10 districts that are Democrat and 1 district that's Republican. Well, right now we're at like 55-45, and I think that's very fair when you look at the general elections across the board for Virginia. Let's say for the last 10 years, Youngkin and Sears and Mieres, when they won in 2021, they didn't win by any 91 to 9. They won in the low 50s to the high 40s. I mean, all of those races, were 55-45 at worst. Now, Spanberger had a big landslide. She had 57 to 40 57.5 to 42.5, but even that's closer to the existing districts that we have that reflect basically a 55-45. She didn't win 91%.
Yeah.
And so it just is frustrating to me that they're willing to violate the Constitution, violate the statutes, and do this in what I think is a blatantly power grab, as you mentioned, putting 5 congressional districts in Northern Virginia. I know that if the voters don't turn out west of 95 to our western borders and our southern borders, then we will not win it. But the rural counties have got to turn out, and they've probably got to turn out 70 or 80%. And we'll just see what happens. But it's, I guess I'm more frustrated because when I was there for 2 redistrictings and I never participated in it, my district kept getting chopped up by Republicans, quite frankly, in the 2001 redistricting. And it was like, look, I just want to live in my district. Don't make me have to move to represent the district I represented for 10 years. And that's the closest I came to being involved in redistricting. I think the bipartisan, the nonpartisan, the independent, whatever people want to call it, redistricting commission that's been set up is very fair. 8 citizens, 8 legislators, equal representation, Republican and Democrat. And if they can't come to an agreement, then it goes to the court. And the court is independent. The court, in the last case, picked two special masters in redistricting, one recommended by the Democrats, one recommended by the Republicans. And I think they came up with a pretty daggone good plan. And I'm just disappointed that the legislators have taken this power grab effort. It just bothers me as someone that likes to think that the Virginia way is the best way, and that we stand for integrity and honesty.
Yeah, the Virginia way. When I think it died, and I know I don't want to digress too much, but with Terry McAuliffe, remember Terry McAuliffe shut down Gambit when he wanted to expand Medicaid? A couple points to make also on, and see what you think of this, what it might mean. Abigail Spanberger came out and cut a commercial in favor of the referendum. And, of course, Obama last week started a commercial. So they may be in a little bit of trouble on this one. And even Don Beyer said it wasn't a done deal. And the other thing about Don Beyer is he let it slip. Don Beyer, the congressman from the 8th District, he's been around since I was a kid. He let it slip because he said in terms of fairness, it's fairness for the country. In other words, to get more Democrats in Congress. It's not necessarily fair for Virginia because our maps aren't going to be fair. We're not going to have a competitive seat. So he sort of let that slip. By the way, as an aside, I think Don Beyer is a very sad figure because here's the guy's got all this money. He can travel the world. He can do all kinds of other things. But what does he want to do? He wants to represent Arlington County in Congress. Even though it's a slam dunk district for Democrats, he could easily give it to someone else, a young lefty, to come up to take it. But he hangs on. He hangs on because I think he wants an office.
He had been Attorney General. Lieutenant Governor. And
Lieutenant Governor.
I think that was a big blow to him. And what was interesting was the car tax was the big issue. And initially, he came out against any, car tax reform. And then 2 or 3 weeks out from the election, Don Beyer comes out with his no car tax. And it really, I think, hurt him very badly that he changed from not wanting to do anything to coming up with some crazy plan to kind of counter Gilmore's plan. And I think that from that point on, I would agree with you. I think he has become basically inconsequential. He doesn't do anything on the national level of any consequence. And just kind of happy as a pig in mud, just representing Arlington.
Yeah, he's sort of the definition of a career politician. Like a Pritzker, had a lot of money and decided to use the wealth to buy offices. And anyway, those are things to watch for. I have a little more confidence in defeating the referendum, but we're getting outspent easily 20-1. So that's my concern. Even though I don't think the people of Virginia want it, but in a special election where they're going to greatly outspend us, that's going to be tough. I will say, though, if Democrats lose this one, and I don't think they will, but if they lose this one, that'll be a major blow. That'll be a major blow to Sandberger and the Democrats' prestige. So that will be, I don't know if it's quite on the level of the U.S. Olympic hockey team beating the Soviets, but it'll be a very bad blow for Democrats on that one. Well, let's think of some winners and losers of the week. I have, and I think I already alluded to my winner of the week, ICE, helping the TSA at the airports. I think it's great for ICE in terms of the reputation. And at JFK Airport, the little boy was choking, and it was an ICE agent that gave the Heimlich maneuver, save him. So, and I was watching the network news. They do the man on the street interviews, and they were asking about airport travelers. What do you think of ICE here at the airport? They probably were expecting outrage or something, but everyone was very happy that ICE was there to help out. So I think that's ICE is a winner in the sense that their reputation, maybe it helps.
It does. I would agree with that. That was a good move, and I think ICE has been a positive in helping the lines move a little bit faster and things of that nature. My winner of the week was the International Olympic Committee, because they came out with a decision that they would be doing gene testing and that men would not be allowed to participate in women's sports. And so I thought that was a big move in the right direction. And their comment was very strong that, no one should have an advantage, just like they banned the steroids and things like that athletes were using back in the 70s and 80s. Now they're going to do genetic testing to make sure that you are a biological woman participating in a sport for biological women. And so for that, and their strong statement, they were my winners of the week, the International Olympic Committee.
That's a good choice. Yeah, I've been noticing, as an aside, the trans ideology hasn't, the trans lobby hasn't been nearly as strong as, I thought they used to be. So they're losing some big cases. Well, for me, a loser of the week is in the state of Maine. They talked the governor, Janet Mills, into running for the Senate because they thought she's a Democrat. They thought she'd be the strongest candidate to beat Susan Collins, and she probably is. But a new poll by Emerson has Janet Mills down by 27% to Graham Plattner, who's the her far left opponent. He's like an oyster farmer or something. And she's trailing him badly. So I think she's going to lose that one, and Plattner's going to get the nomination. Graham Plattner, for those of you who may have forgotten, is the one. He's scandal-plagued. One controversy is he had a Nazi tattoo on his chest, and he took it off, but he had to explain that. And then there's some other charges against him as well. So he'll be a flawed candidate, but the left loves him. He's like their AOC. But this is a big blow to Janet Mills, who's had a long career in politics, and she thought it was going to be a coronation for the nomination, but no, looks like she may lose that one. So she's
that's an excellent choice. Because in a primary or not, she's still a loser, in my opinion. I went with Chuck Schumer. I just think that for the second time, they've had a 40-plus day shutdown, and now it'll be even longer, and the Democrats have gotten nothing out of it. Remember, their primary purpose was to demask ICE and a whole bunch of other reforms that really restricted their ability. I think in some cases the Senate Republicans went along with the no funding for ICE and Border Patrol because they knew the House was going to kill it, and it would give an example that the Democrats were against the police, against law enforcement, again and again and again. Several years ago after Floyd, it was everybody wanted to defund their police, cut the police, ranks and everything else. And I think this was look, we're not gonna get them to move. So let's just go ahead and vote on this thing, send it to the House. We know the House is not going to approve it. So that vote was a meaningless vote. Schumer still hadn't gotten any ICE reforms, which were the only things they were really asking for. And I think he's a loser. I think he's a loser for not getting anything that he wanted. And two, I just think this idea of government shutdowns, he's like the face of government shutdowns now. And I just consider him the loser of the week. While he might claim I was doing something for TSA and this, that, and the other, so on and so forth, the bottom line is they knew that bill was not going to pass in the House. So it was performative.
So much of it is our politics is. Well, I also want to mention before we go the passing of Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller, very distinguished military career and FBI and law enforcement career. Mueller his career ended on a bad note, and that is he was in charge of the Mueller investigation looking into the Trump campaign and the Russian collusion hoax. And the thing is, by that time, Mueller's mind was already very weakened. And he didn't really, and I think the hearings prove this when he showed up to testify, that he didn't really know what was going on. It was the underlings that were running everything. Mueller was just signing off on stuff, as we later learn. So it's kind of a sad way for him to end an otherwise very distinguished career. But yeah, the Mueller investigation tarnished him.
I would agree 100% with that. He had to do was watch the hearings when he was testifying. I mean, it was obvious that Andrew Weissman was the one pulling the strings, and I don't know that you can find anybody, maybe Jim Comey, more anti-Trump or more infected with TDS than Andrew Weissman, and they failed. I mean, they thought they had all this evidence, and it fell apart on them. And that didn't even stop them. They still kept spending $20 million of taxpayer funds on something that they proved absolutely nothing. And when Mueller testified, it was as if Joe Biden was testifying. He wasn't, like you said, he wasn't tuned into what was going on, and he sounded like a ship adrift, in the ocean. He didn't know which way to go, and it did tarnish, I think, a very distinguished career. And it's unfortunate that was his last public, appearance, basically.
And at one point, I remember in the hearings, the Democrats were trying to build him up, and the one member talked about, wanted to try to bring up his career, and even asked him, so who appointed you, FBI? I guess FBI director or something. And it was Ronald Reagan. And I think the Democrat wanted that point to come out, that Ronald Reagan. But Mueller had forgotten who had appointed him. The director, I guess, was FBI. So, yeah, a sad case. But anyway, I just want to mention that before we go. Actually, it's interesting. Every show we have, every week, it looks like someone passes away. And I forgot to mention so-and-so or so-and-so. So I wanted to get that in about Mueller. Well, I hope you have a good week. And by the way, I do want to continue to encourage people to subscribe to my Substack and consider becoming a paid supporter. And in which case, I'll send you a free copy of my book. And the subscription is like $8 a month, so that would really help out. So please consider that. I think Saturday voting is still open, so you can still vote no on the referendum. So I'd encourage that. And I will start getting to doing some door-to-door here. I know I'm due to start helping get out the vote, so I'll do that. And then also, as we come closer to this, I'll let you know I'll be in Western Maryland next month speaking to a political group. So I'll get you the details of that. But all right, Phil, well, have a great weekend. And have a great weekend, everybody. And look forward to seeing you next Friday right here.